What's up, guys? We're back on the Piers Morgan channel. We're gonna do a review, and Piers is gonna do some reflection on what happened with him and Megyn Kelly yesterday. That was hilarious. Her going on a tirade about the halftime show with Bad Bunny, and he's gonna drop some jewels again. But anyway, go to Piers Morgan's channel, subscribe, tell him I sent you, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well.
The fallout from Bad Bunny's halftime show has now spun into 3 frenzied days of debate.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. We're gonna watch Piers Morgan, and he's gonna do a recap of what happened last time between him and Megyn Kelly regarding the halftime show with Bad Bunny, and he's gonna educate her about her American Pie and her and what else did she say? Beef or something like that. Anyways, whatever. He's gonna give her some lessons on things like that. But anyway, she is just losing it. She's getting from bad to worse. But anyway, let's watch the show. Let's get into it.
Debate, which frankly is a bit over the top. But there's a reason for that. The Super Bowl is an iconic national event. People care about the image of America that the Super Bowl projects to the world. Megyn Kelly represented one side of the argument in typically scintillating style, which is why it's been viewed 35 million times across all our Piers Morgan Uncensored platforms so far.
We have to keep the Super Bowl, which is a quintessential American event. Football, that kind of football, is ours.
Racist.
They call it American football. And the halftime show and everything around it needs to stay quintessentially American. Not Spanish, not Muslim, not anything other than good old-fashioned American apple pie. There should be a meatloaf, maybe some fried chicken, and an English-speaking performer. That's what the Super Bowl should be.
Well, apple pie is, in fact, British, and meatloaf is German. But the more interesting question that many have been asking in response to this is what is meant by
She's
ours?
so stupid.
Based on the feedback to my own cheerful review of the show, I'm well aware that it doesn't include me. But Bad Bunny is from Puerto Rico. He's an American. And tens of millions of Americans speak Spanish.
Shots fired.
Who gives a damn that we have 40 million Spanish speakers in the United States? We have 310 million who don't speak a lick of Spanish. This is supposed to be a unifying event for the country, not for the Latinos, not for one small group, but for the country.
So what makes it less American? Is it just the language? I mean, rodeos are quintessentially American, but they're also Spanish and have a whole Spanish vocabulary. Lasso, Mustang, Bronco, and so on. Budweiser, the all-American beer, well, that's a German word. Auld Lang Syne, a New Year's classic,
They're
well,
just
Scottish.
stupid, bro.
And let's not forget that the whole country is named after an Italian explorer, Amerigo Vespucci. And I don't remember the same outrage over Kendrick Lamar's show last year, even though many English speakers, myself included, could barely understand a word of that either. Well, I'll be debating all this with my panel in a moment, but first, some members of Congress have been given the chance this week to view the unredacted Epstein files. One of them is South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace, who joins me now. Congresswoman, thank you very much indeed for coming back on Uncensored.
Thank you for having me, Piers.
You've had a chance that very few have had, which is to get into some of these redactions that were being made. Obviously, there are millions of documents. How much have you been able to see that you think is significant? And what is being hidden by these redactions, do you think?
Very little. In fact, the most important documents in my mind are the documents that are related to potential co-conspirators and individuals who have already been investigated and have seen no jail time. And one of those particular documents is an investigation document that the DOJ put on its website at one point and then took it down. Well, I went to the DOJ. That was the first document that I tried to pull up yesterday. And wouldn't you know, it is completely redacted. I still can't take a look at it. And I was told by the DOJ that the reason for that is that this is the way that the data came to the DOJ from the Southern District of New York. And there were also memos, internal memos by the DOJ that were attached to emails that I wanted to review as I'm sitting inside the DOJ. And guess what, Piers? Those attachments, those internal memos discussing co-conspirators that were investigated were unavailable to me. And so when you see this, you just realize this is one of the greatest cover-ups in American history. And I'm talking about multiple DOJs, multiple FBIs, multiple administrations, and all these girls want is justice and the truth. And we have to shame these predators out of existence, out of civil society, if they're not going to see jail time. And that's what this process is about. I'm going back again in a few hours to try to look up more documents, particularly related to the co-conspirators.
Is it likely that members of the House or the Senate, perhaps, are going to start naming some of these redacted names using the cover of Congress?
I'm one of the experts on the speech and debate clause. I have named names on the House floor, but also I will be naming names in a memo that I am currently drafting to the U.S. House of Representatives Oversight Committee. These are not necessarily people that I believe are predators, but these are people who I believe may be witnesses, may have information, because if the DOJ and the FBI aren't going to do their job, it is up to brave and courageous members of Congress to do it for them. And I believe that that passion and that courage and that bravery exists on the House Oversight Committee. And the list of names that I have just from being in the DOJ for 2 hours yesterday is longer than I could have imagined. And so I'm going back again in a few hours. I'm going to have a longer list of names. The other thing I want to mention, Piers, one of my biggest frustrations yesterday is that the Department of Justice only has 4 computers, 4 chairs, for ostensibly 535 members of Congress who may want to look at the documents. You have a tiny room the size of a closet with 4 chairs in it. And we have to take turns and make appointments. And, this thing is going to be long and drawn out. It could take me months to get through documents at this rate that I believe are going to be critical as this information is hidden from members of Congress. And that's wrong.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And what about the fact that, all right, we saw 3 million documents released a week ago, but actually there apparently are more than 3 million more documents which they have no intention of making public. How does that sit with the administration's claim to be desirous of being fully transparent?
Well, I can tell you there are folks on both sides of the aisle that are going to go after this. And once you put that bone in my mouth, I'm like a dog. I'm going to keep going at it. I will not let go. And that's what we have to do here. We can't allow women to continue to be second-class citizens. I don't care if you have a tiara or a crown. You shouldn't get away with this. If you are rich and powerful or a billionaire, and if you did something to these women, you go to jail. And I want to give hope to the Epstein victims because I've lost all faith in the justice system. And if they're not going to go to jail, then we shame them out of existence, out of civil society. They lose their board seats, they lose jobs, they lose business deals, and we don't celebrate this kind of thing. Going to a pedophile island years after someone is a convicted pedophile to have lunch with your kids or whomever is wrong. And I just don't understand where the moral clarity is lost on members of Congress who are afraid to touch this subject. As a survivor, I'm seeing this in real time. In my own case, the judge in my cases revealed the names of the victims. It wouldn't let them continue as Jane Does, just like the Epstein victims, whose names and identifying information were revealed to the public after they were promised it would be redacted. After by law, they were told it had to be redacted. Virginia Guffrey Roberts, minor children. I mean, those names were revealed in those documents. And so it's almost like they want to protect the predators and continue the abuse and trauma of the victims. And that's wrong. And I'm going to stand up with them and for them and beside them until my last breath and until every man and woman who did something to these girls is held accountable.
Well, good for you. I mean, I want to put some names to you that have
good for
been
you.
in the news connected to Epstein files this
that.
week. The U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, I think you were just alluding to this, has now confirmed in his hearing that he visited Epstein's island in 2012. Now, that's contradicting his previous claims that he cut all ties with him years earlier, and was, of course, several years after Epstein's conviction for being a paedophile. And he said, I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. We had lunch on the island. That is true for an hour. Now, that doesn't mean he did anything wrong, but it does mean he was not telling the truth originally about the timeline of his relationship with Epstein. And it does beg the question, why are you taking your family to an island owned by a convicted pedophile?
I would never do that as a mom. I want to protect children with every fiber of my being, and would do that. But you would be shocked, Piers, at some of the names that I have seen that came across the DOJ in emails that the DOJ is protecting. And we're talking about people on both sides of the aisle. We're talking about famous people, rich people, people in power, prime ministers, former presidents, et cetera, media personalities that are named in these files. And that's why I say this is going to go down as the greatest cover-up, one of the greatest cover-ups in American history. And I don't believe the girls are actually going to see justice, which is why it's going to be incumbent upon people like Democrat Ro Khanna, Republican Thomas Massey. I'm a Republican myself who's willing to name some of those names in our committee work, on the floor of the House, whatever it takes, because this kind of thing cannot continue to go on. I want to give the next girl hope that when she comes forward, she won't be shamed. Her life won't be smeared in the Daily Mail or whatever the next press, is going to do. What they do to female victims and to children is disgusting, because they're protecting their rich and powerful friends. But you'd be surprised, shocked even at some of the names in the files.
Today's show is sponsored by Oxford Natural, makers of the Optimum Day and Optimum Night all-natural supplement.
Right, and spitting in the face of every...
by President Trump. I mean, what does it come to when a woman serving a 20-year sentence for being part of this disgusting sexual predatory, trafficking, revolting situation, suddenly decides to try and blackmail the President of the United States and force clemency for telling the truth?
Right, and spitting in the face of every woman and girl that she abused and victimized. I mean, she is a pedophile. And you read these testimony, I can tell you some of the harshest and hardest to read documents are the grand jury documents in the Southern District of New York, and talking about a 13 or 14-year-old girl sitting in Jeffrey Epstein's lap and Ghislaine Maxwell's involvement in that. And the girl she allegedly had sexual intercourse with or sexual relations with, they looked for the poorest, the most abused, the runaways, the ones in juvenile, the girls that needed and were desperate to get out of a horrible situation at home or get out of their poor communities. They preyed upon these girls, and they were young and they were vulnerable, and to take pride in that because she wants to get released out of jail rather than having the conviction or the moral clarity or the remorse. There's no remorse in Ghislaine Maxwell. She has no remorse for what she's done, or she would name names. And I guess if she names names, maybe she would be offed like Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know. But, it's worth it to these women to ensure that this doesn't continue. And we've seen foreign nations do more against potential predators like former Prince Andrew than we've done in the United States. And we're the leader of the free world.
Yeah, I mean, that is the bizarre thing here, where you see the downfall of Peter Mandelson, the downfall of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. These are, people at the highest echelons of political and royal power in the UK being completely taken down. We're not seeing the same domino effect with names in America. Why do you think that is?
Because it's our culture of protecting predators and continuing to, basically prosecute victims. I see it in my own case right now that I turned over evidence to law enforcement and no one's been arrested, and the names of the victims, some of the victims were revealed by the judge in those cases. But you see this recycled abuse of these women who come forward. And it's just the way that I think culturally we've been for hundreds of years. This is what's okay in American society. And I appreciate and am grateful for the bravery, for the courage, for the truth that the Epstein survivors are coming forward with. They're risking their lives. They're risking their mental health because this is deeply traumatic for them. One has already committed suicide. And for some of them who've been Jane Doe for years, to see their names accidentally revealed in the DOJ documents, I can't imagine how devastating it is for that woman today and her family, who may not know that she was a victim, but now they do because the DOJ revealed that information.
Nancy Mace, I really appreciate you coming back on Uncensored. Thank you very much. Well, let's hear now from my panel. Isaiah Martin is a Democrat congressional candidate in Texas. It was just gone viral after taking on 20 Republicans in this week's Jubilee. Mike Nellis is host of Endless Urgency, the strategist behind White Dudes for Harris. And Clay Travis is founder of Outkick. And Tyrus is on his way and will be joining us very soon. Okay, just first of all, Clay Travis, let's just talk about this Epstein scandal. Because it is completely bizarre sitting here in London, watching people go down like dominoes. And these are not insignificant figures. You've got the former Prince Andrew in line to the throne of the UK, obviously. You've got Lord Mandelson, who was a UK ambassador to the United States. He's gone. They've both been completely torched as a consequence of what's emerged about them in these files. But we're not seeing that in America. Why are we not? And do you want us to?
Well, I think, first of all, there should be people bearing consequences who were involved in actually some sort of activity with girls alongside of Epstein. And I think you have seen a lot of Americans lose their jobs. I mean, the head of one of the biggest law firms in the United States lost his job. You've seen people in media lose jobs recently that they've gotten. But I think also people are looking at some of the details and saying there's a difference. For instance, Howard Lutnick's being attacked right now, and you can criticize him for continuing to interact with Jeffrey Epstein, certainly. But he went to Epstein Island with his wife and a bunch of kids on a cruise trip to the Caribbean. And so all connections are not the exact same. And so I think what you're actually seeing in the United States is there's being a lot of discernment as to what was going on. I'll also add in, there's so much volume here that I do think a lot of people are just frankly overwhelmed with the 3 million different documents that are out there and all the different names that are flooding the zone. I think there's some degree of people just being overwhelmed with the sheer amount of people that were involved here across all the landscape. And so, again, I think there's some discernment when it comes to actual interaction. Are these business partners? Are these people who were involved with women or not? Are these people that may have even gone to the island, as I said, in the case of Howard Lutnick, and done so with their wife and with their kids, which I think is quite a lot different than the crimes that Epstein was accused of committing.
Okay, Mike Nellis, I mean, notwithstanding, a lot of what Clay said there, I'm sure is right. But people want accountability. And as I said to Congresswoman Mace, the fact that there are going to be more than 3 million documents from the Epstein files that apparently are not going to be made public strikes me as absolutely staggering. And of course, that's going to do nothing but inflame all the raging conspiracy theories.
I think that's absolutely right, is people should be incredibly angry that nobody is being prosecuted for this. And let's be clear about what's happening here. The Department of Justice under Donald Trump and Pam Bondi are covering this up. Let's not forget that in July, over the July 4th weekend, they told us that this investigation was over and that there was nothing there. How many times do we have to hear that Donald Trump isn't in the Epstein files, then we find out he's in there a million times? How many times do we have to listen to guys like Howard Lutnick say, I met Jeffrey Epstein once and then it turns out he was a creep, but I wasn't there? You keep unwinding this stuff and you find that these guys have been lying for so long. So the reason there isn't accountability either criminally or just in polite society like Nancy Mace talked about earlier is because Donald Trump is at the heart of this because these guys are covering it up. Howard Lutnick says, I didn't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein. He only lived next door to the guy, started a business with the guy, and brought his kids, which to me is disgusting, on a trip to Epstein Island after it was already known that the guy was a registered sex offender. Donald Trump is out there saying, I didn't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein and what he was doing, except he was talking about it. He partied with the guy. He met his wife, his current wife, at an Epstein party. Not to mention the fact that he's mentioned the files over 1 million times. So it's embarrassing to me. And to your point, Piers, all over Europe, people are having their careers destroyed because of their relationship with a guy who is a registered sex offender who trafficked kids. And that's not happening in the United States. And it's embarrassing. And frankly, it's embarrassing when MAGA bootlickers come on and defend this stuff because it's an 80-20 issue to the vast majority of Americans who are pissed. Kids were abused here. We got to take this seriously.
We have, but Isaiah Martin, I mean, you know.
Well, the government hasn't. You're taking it seriously, Piers, which I appreciate.
What crimes specifically should be charged?
Well, at a bare minimum, we know that there were kids that were trafficked. How is it possible that Ghislaine Maxwell is the only person that's ever going to be prosecuted for that?
Well, because she trafficked. I mean, if you read the indictment,
she trafficked them by herself. Is your position? Wait, hold on, Clay. Is your position that Ghislaine Maxwell trafficked these kids by herself?
She trafficked them for Jeffrey Epstein. That is what the charges
but by
show.
herself,
That's
nobody else helped. There were 1,000 little boys and 1,000 little girls that were trafficked on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein by Ghislaine Maxwell. But is she the only one who did it?
That is not accurate based on the evidence. I just asked a simple question. You want people prosecuted. Who should be prosecuted and what should they be charged with?
Yeah, I want the 6 co-conspirators to be prosecuted for trafficking little kids.
Okay,
and I want the rest of these people. Hold on, Clay. I'm answering your question.
I'm a lawyer, so this matters to me. When you say people should be charged, and when you
human
say
trafficking is a crime, you might want to check your penal
code. Charged, who and with what crimes? Let me also ask you this, as we lead into that: why did Joe Biden not charge anybody? Why did Barack Obama not charge anybody? Do you think the only thing that Democrats and Republicans agree on is that Jeffrey Epstein should be protected and everybody else around him should be protected? Look. The reality here, in my opinion, is if you actually look at the evidence that came out, Trump in 2006 said, thank the Lord, basically, I'm paraphrasing, in the actual Epstein files in 2006, that you were able to charge this guy. We all knew that things were going on that were inappropriate. You can't go after Donald Trump on this at all. Do you really think that Joe Biden
hold on. Let's talk about that for a second.
Evidence that Trump committed crimes when he tried to imprison him for the rest of his life over bogus charges in New York City, when he tried to put him in prison, bankrupt him? You think he's set on Epstein?
Right.
This just doesn't add up. So again, I circle back to the basic question. Who should be charged and what should they be charged with based on your reading of the evidence? Specifically, tell me.
So this is a clever trick that these MAGA influencers like to do, is that they want to blame this on Joe Biden.
How is it a clever trick?
Hey, Clay, let me finish my point. Hold on, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong. But let me finish my point.
I said
I answered your question already, Clay, but you keep interrupting me. All right, listen.
So
this is what they want to do.
Tell us what the charges should be.
This entire thing is a failure of multiple administrations. There are Democrats and Republicans in the file. And the bottom line here is that there's an Epstein class and its defenders, like Clay, and there's everybody else. And so right now, they're defending Donald Trump, who has been covering this up. There are 6 co-conspirators. Clay, there are 6.
Everybody should be charged with crimes.
No, that's not what I said, Clay. There are 6.
You can't even give me a name or a crime.
Do you realize how obtuse you sound at the idea that nobody else can be charged by this? There are 6 co-conspirators in the files that Congress has seen that are currently blocked off. You can't tell me that 1,000 little girls and boys were trafficked and nobody else.
And what the crime
I don't know their names because they're concealing them in the files, Clay, because the Trump administration is covering this up.
You know what? So
you're telling me to tell you something I don't know.
Time out.
All right.
Time out. You know, the bottom line, Clay, is this. The best way to work out who should be prosecuted and who should be charged is for every one of these files to be released unredacted, with the exception of the names of the victims. Hang on, with the exception of the names of the victims, right? So that everyone knows exactly who's been accused of what, and then everyone can determine who should potentially be prosecuted or not. Because they're going to keep back 3 million files, the suspicion will continue that this is a powerful
Here's what I would
cover-up.
say. Here's what I would say about that.
I've always been blunt about health. It's one thing you can't debate your way out of. Like all of you, I've had first-hand experience of
I think right here's a good spot to continue. But I'm gonna stop in a few minutes though. I don't want to make it too long.
All of the women who receive payments, and I believe they received about $120 million in payments from the Epstein estate after he died. All of them are free to go out and name exactly who they say assaulted them, who they say victimized them in any way. They have complete ability to do that. The so-called Epstein victims who have received over $100 million.
So-called Epstein victims. We should call that out for what that is. That's a bullshit.
No, it's not. They are saying that they are Epstein victims and they have been paid. They can come out and say, no one is stopping them. I would welcome them. I would encourage them. Come out and tell us.
Well, actually, quite a few. Hang on. Quite a few. Okay, but Clay, quite a few. Quite a few are beginning to do that. Quite a few are beginning to do that. So it's going to be interesting how many more follow that path. Isaiah, you've been waiting very patiently. What's your view of where we are with this scandal?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that this is a entire view of the Republican Party right here with Clay, the so-called Epstein victims. Look, ultimately, I think if the Republicans wanted to end this situation, they would call and join the millions of Americans that are saying that we want to see the unredacted Epstein files. 3 million files currently sit as we stand today that are redacted. And people want to see the truth. And the fact that you have MAGA running around carrying water for Trump, as Mike said, claiming that these victims are so-called victims or whatever it is, it's a shame to the American public. And it's why the Republican Party is losing trust all around this country. I think it's abundantly clear. It's why they're losing special elections everywhere we see, because of the fact that they're losing the trust of the American people. And I think that what Clay just said makes that abundantly clear.
I don't think that Republicans actually have any particular opinion. I'm sharing my opinion. I think actually the majority of people
so-called Epstein victims.
Fed up with the Epstein situation in general. My position is, if you actually look at the evidence, I do not believe that every Democrat in power and every Republican in power conspired to cover up a bevy of charges that would otherwise have been brought. And by the way, if you want to make it a Democrat,
people are fed
up your problem.
They're fed up with the fact that people are going in this country and they're carrying water for pedophiles in America. That's what they're fed up with, Clay.
Are actually Democrat donors like Jeffrey Epstein. If you want to make it a Democrat-Republican issue, there are way more.
Clay, this is what's so insane about this situation. We have said from the very beginning that we support every single person that is inside of the Epstein files that has been assaulting children.
You know the truth.
We want to call them out. We want to see them prosecuted.
That's what we say. The truth is, the Biden administration didn't release these files. The Trump administration promised to and hasn't released all the files. So the American people and the watching world, because it affects many other countries too, are looking on going, who is actually going to honor the claim to be transparent? And I think until there is proper transparency on this, this is going to go on and on and on and on. And actually, someone at some stage has to go, you know what? We're going to put it all out there, because until that happens, the conspiracy theories will rage. I want to move on. So joining the panel, back for the first time on Uncensored in a while, but a very welcome return to the best-selling author, the Fox News superstar, that is Tyrus. Tyrus, welcome back.
Hey, how you feeling, Piers? How you doing?
You know what? I know you're a fitness guy. You're my fitness guru in many ways. My new hip is beginning to kick in. I've been doing a few little gentle laps of my local high street. And yeah, things are looking better.
Pretty soon get you back in the gym, bro.
Okay, guys, I don't want to make this video too long. That's as much as I'm gonna follow here. But if you guys want to watch the whole video, just go to Piers Morgan's channel and check him out. He has some good interviews. But thank you for joining me on my channel. Please subscribe, spread some love, and have yourself a good day. Peace. Catch you on the next one. I'm out of here.